Hi crafty beginners, this is Hannah and welcome to my channel. On the last video I was showing how to use a basic A2 card and use a simple block stamp to progress through 5 different designs. So we started with this design and the next progression was to this design. Then we went here, then here, and then here. So just briefly, the changes that were made, we went from just a card base with 1 layer and the embellishments to a card base with 2 layers, one of which is a layer of colored cardstock. We had 2 flatback crystals. Here we have sequins, moved the position of the flower, but left this one element in place in the design. On this design, we still have the card base, the colored layer cardstock, but here we went to a embossed background, and I used a Swiss dot embossing folder, and then I die cut using one of my edge dies to put this design in it. We changed up the washi tape and added a more decorative flower. In this design, again, we have the card base, but I switched over to the color that was the layer here. I made it the actual base of the card, our primary color. And then I used a colored printed paper, and it's just a little polka dot behind that, but kept our image pretty much the same as on the previous one, because when we went from here to here, we also did some background blending on the image, and I kept that background blending on this image and added a butterfly. And then for the final iteration of this card, I decided that I wanted a more dramatic card, and so I changed the background layer to a bold color, framed it to give it a 3D appearance. And I was trying to put it so you can, but right back here you can see I used foam dots to give that dimension and give the card a 3D appearance, and then added the cute little green gingham bow for contrast, and I think it worked out pretty well. So when you're doing your cards, when you're starting, you have limited stamps. So what you need to look at is, how can I change the landscape? I mean, I have this real estate to work with. I have 1, 2, or 3 stamps, but how can I take one stamp and change it up and make 5 different cards? So I hope that that was helpful to you as a beginner. And again, if you have questions, and I will put the link to my blog at the bottom, but on my beginner's blog, A Place to Start, if you have questions, you can go there and leave your questions, and I will answer them. And I try to answer fairly quickly. My schedule gets a little crazy because I've got a couple of blogs going, but I will get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, so I was going to do another basic A2 card for this presentation, but I thought, why don't we do something a little different? So I was working on a project for one of my craft buddies, and so the first project that I did was this, and that was for her, and I'm going to send this to her in a day or so. This is just I call it a tag pocket card. It's just something that I decided to do on my own, but I'm sure I'm not the first person to do it. I'm sure there are other examples of this out there, because there are a lot of pocket cards and tag cards that are done. But this is my version of that particular design style. I created the background using a stencil and distress inks. The sentiment here was from an Altenew stamp set called Crafty Life. It's a stamp and die set. There are those are the dyes that come with it. I'm not promoting, or I don't represent Altenew or any other dye company. It's just the one that I happen to find the appropriate sentiment for this that's going to a crafting pal. And I just stamped it on a piece of scrap paper and colored it in with the inks that correspond to my envelope color. And then I put some craft dots, the double-sided foam dots behind it to elevate it. On the back, I stenciled the word art, and I just found some coordinating ribbon in my stash, and this ribbon came from Really Reasonable Ribbon, and I will put a link down below to that. And then I put a small piece of washi tape at the bottom just to try to, that edge was looking kind of rough and I wanted to soften that look, so I put that there. For the tag, I used my decorative circle dies, and then I just used my regular Spellbinders Nestabilities. You probably won't be able to find these like this because these are really, really old. I've had them since 2010, so it's 10 years. But they do have them, and I think they have them on for sale on Amazon. I will link to these if I find them on Amazon. I need to tell you up front that I am an Amazon associate and I participate in their associate programs. So if you click on any of the links and purchase any of the supplies, I will get a small payment for that. It's not much, but I have to tell you that up front. I'm not suggesting that you do that. I mean, I would appreciate it, but you shop wherever you want to shop and for whatever fits your budget, because I'm all about not overspending on craft supplies. Okay, so now that we've got the housekeeping out of the way, this was the second one I did. I made this one because I started the video and then I had a problem with my software, and I've been going back and forth with the software company, so I had to start all over again with the video to make another project. So this was the second one that I did. Use the same process of ink, stencils, and I just stenciled art on the front of this one, left the back pretty much plain, and created this tag to go on the inside. My next attempt to get my software working, I started this project, and I got the envelope card part done, and then I ran into another problem. So now I'm starting again today, and we'll see if we can get through this, but I'll have a lot of these to send out. On this one, I made one change, and then I added a piece of cardstock on the inside so that the colors would show through my decorative border. On the previous two, on this and on this project, I used edge dies and just cut decorative edges. On this one, I used a border die that doesn't really cut an edge, it just cuts a design into your cardstock. There is another die that I could have put here, which would have made this edge take the same shape as the die, but I didn't want to do that. That wasn't the look that I was going for. So so now I've ended up with another one. And so I thought what I would do today, because these are very easy to make, but I thought we'd finish this project. And rather than starting with the envelope itself, the envelope card itself, the little holder, tag holder, I thought we might start with the tag. Now, these are the papers that I anticipate using for the tag, so that I'm pulling in this color throughout my design. So if you want to follow along with me as I create it, what you should do is I'm going to tell you the supplies that you need. I'm going to put them up on the screen, and then you can pause the video, gather the materials that you need, and then we'll get started doing this project. I will try to make this video as short as possible. However, since I'm making these videos for beginners, I want to try to go through step by step so that I can talk to you about what we're doing and make sure that you fully understand what is going on. Okay, so right now, here are the supplies you will need to gather. You will need a paper trimmer. Any size paper trimmer will do. Any type paper trimmer will do. I will be using my Fiskars. I think this is pretty much what most crafters have. Now, a lot of people use Stampin' Up! And a lot of other supplies from stamping companies. I find those supplies to be overpriced. I'm just going to be upfront. If you're just getting started, I would recommend that you never adopt the mindset that because it has somebody else's name stamped on it, that it's better than, say, companies like Fiskars or other companies out there that have been making these forever. They were making paper trimmers for offices before crafting became all the rage and before card making was this big deal. So there's no reason for you to spend $30 for a trimmer when you can get this on Amazon or at Office Depot for $17. You don't get anything extra for the additional money that you're spending other than a brand name on it, which doesn't help you cut straight. So you either are going to be able to master using this tool or you are not. And the amount of money that you pay for the trimmer is not going to make any difference at all. Now this particular trimmer, and with the slide cutter, I have a rotary cutter also that the cutter blade is round and the holder for the blade is big, and you've seen those. That's fine too if you want to get one of those. It just depends. I have like 8 different cutters. You will need you don't really need a punch. You don't really need this punch, but if you're going to try to make the finger hole in the card, if you're going to make that finger pull, then a punch makes it easy to just do that. But if you don't have that, if you have a small cap, or if you have, like, see, this is my purple tape, so I would just take my purple tape, place it where I want it, and then use my pencil to draw around it like that. Anything that gives you a half circle, and then you simply take your scissors, and if you can cut, see, I have to have tools because cutting not my strong suit, but if you can cut smoothly, you can cut it. And I mean, don't judge by mine, yours will look a lot better. But if you can do that, then there you go. You will have your tab there. So you can see where my cutting was a little off, but you get the general idea. But if you have the punch, whatever size you have, it can be a smaller one. I decided to make mine larger, but yours can be a smaller one, so you will need that. I suggest having on hand scissors, glue. I do want to make a recommendation when it comes to glue. If you're just starting out, to avoid you're having to go through the whole glue scenario that most of us have been through, trying to find a glue that really does work. This is Books by Hand pH neutral PVA glue. It is a book binding glue. I use this when I'm making books, and I started using it in my crafting. It works beautifully. You won't get warping in your paper. You don't have to put a lot of it on. You know, you just need to use the dot method, and we'll go over that method of applying your glue. It dries clear and it dries flexible. And when I say it dries flexible, some glues dry really, really hard. So if you use them on something like this and you start trying to move it around, or it can cause some cracking, and it can cause warping. But this glue dries flexible because it's used to bind book pages, and you want the pages to be able to open and lay flat. and you don't want them buckling, you don't want them warping. And so that's why this is an amazing product, and I would recommend that you use it. It's not very expensive either. This is 4 ounces, which lasts me a pretty long time, and I use a lot. I mean, I glue a lot of things, but it's only, I think, $7 or $8, about $8 for 4 ounces. And you will find that other glues, you get like 2 ounces, and you pay a lot more. So you might want to give that a look-see. Obviously, you will need ribbon, some way to secure your flap. On this, if you want to do this, then you just need a regular, just a little hole punch. And I just used this, and I've made pencil marks where I wanted my holes to be, and then I punched them. And I do have other machines that will do this, but as beginners, I'm making the assumption that you aren't going to have all the fancy crafting tools yet, but you might have just this basic tool. Or even if you have the 2-hole punch that they use in the office, the ones that are adjustable, so you can move your holes in. But if not, you can mark where you want your holes to be, and you can use, I guess, like a screwdriver. I use an awl. You can use the back of a paintbrush just to cut your hole out and make the hole. What I did when I first got started and I was making holes like this and I wasn't using all the fancy equipment, I would make the hole, and then I would take the reinforcements that you use in binders when you tear your paper in a 3-ring binder, and they have little white reinforcements. I would color those and put them on my project. And then sometimes I would stamp like anything on it, because you're not going to see the whole image, and put it there. But this one I just did the holes and left it blank. So, but you will need a way to punch a hole. And I think that's all. In between my layers, the back layer and then this top layer on my tags, I inserted craft foam. You don't have to do that. You could just, you don't even have to use 2 layers. You can just cut 1 circle and attach your tags to that. Now, if you don't have double-sided tape, in the places where I use double-sided tape, you can use glue. You just have to make sure that you don't put down too much glue. So you can use glue, you can use a glue runner, or this is a Artex Crafters tape. They don't make the Artex anymore. This is a great one. You got 4 in a box for like $7. But the last time I checked on Amazon, they said they didn't know when they'd have these back in stock. But there are other tape runners. My favorite is the Xyron Mega Runner. It works perfectly, it's easy to use, and it doesn't glitch as much as other runners do. So I will put a link to it down below as well. If you're going to invest in a tape runner, you may as well invest in one that works, and this one works very well. Okay, you need a bone folder. This is a Teflon bone folder. I recommend that you get a Teflon bone folder. I have lots of bone folders. Then this is just 3 of them. I use this one when I'm working on a project where the edges are not going to be seen. Like if I'm building a box, if I'm making a box, or I'm making a project that I'm going to cover later with designer paper, then I use this because I don't care if the edges are shiny. But on my cards that are going out to clients and family and friends, I use my Teflon bone folder, because when you crease, particularly your white cardstock, this won't leave those shiny marks that you can get with the regular type. So there are all kinds of bone folders, but as I said, I'd recommend that you get this type, which is the Teflon one, and again, a link to all the supplies will be down below. You will also need tape. Sometimes I use the purple tape, but to hold my stencils down. But the purple tape is very aggressive in its hold. And so sometimes when before you use it, you have to put it on a piece of clothing or something and lift it up several times so that it doesn't tear your paper. What I've been using recently is the Scotch brand removable tape, and this doesn't stick. I use this to run things through my die cut machine to hold them down, and it does not rip up my paper, so I haven't been destroying as many or any projects since I started using this. So you might want to use this. If you don't have this, I wouldn't recommend using the regular Scotch brand tape, because if you run that through your die cut machine, it's really going to stick and you're going to have difficulty getting it up. But if you have just regular masking tape in your house, you can use that. Just when you, I'm just going to roll my sleeve down, and just when you tear off a piece, just like put it here or on your pad. I usually do it on my on my leggings leg, and I just put it down a couple of times, pull it up, put it down, pull it up a few times so that it isn't quite as tacky, and therefore won't ruin your project. Now, I am going to be stamping, and I am going to assume that you do not have a stamping platform. You may have stamp blocks, but to do the stamping, you will need something. If you're using clear stamps, or even if you're using a rubber unmounted stamp, is what they call it, that doesn't have the wood block on it. If you're using wood block, then you'll have to position it and stamp it using the eyeball method. But if you're using the clear stamps that are popular today, you're going to need to be able to line it up so it'll either be on one of these blocks or a stamp platform. Now, I did a video on a stamp platform that is available. It's very affordable. It's $24.99, and you can get it on Amazon. I don't know where else you can get it. That's where I got mine. That's the only place I've seen it, but it may be available other places. You'll just have to check. So this is the stamp platform. It's called the Stamping Pro, and it's made by the company is called Sunlit, but there's another partner company in it, Bravia, I believe, Bravia. I will check and put the correct information up, as well as, of course, the link. And this just allows you to line up your stamp and get it straight, and to be able to stamp multiple times. One of the things with using the acrylic blocks to stamp, is that you have to get it right, because it's very difficult to align your stamps to be able to double or triple stamp an image. Now, if you are on a budget and you don't even, because some people may not have $25 to spend, there are stamp press out there that are very reasonable. I've had this stamp press 15 years maybe. This is the Fiskars. This was one of the first stamp press, and it had these little sponge feet on the bottom. Nowadays they have the spring-loaded legs, just like they have on here. I'm turning these around so you can see them. So these are spring-loaded, and these are spring-loaded, and so it's the same principle. It's just, this gives you a firm base so that you don't have to position your stamps on what you're stamping, like your paper. You would have to position it on something and probably tape it down to keep it from moving around, and then use this press. But Memory Keepers has a stamp press that I think is like $11 or something like that. So that might be more in your price range. It just depends. Personally, if you're going to spend $11 for a stamp press, then adding another $14 to it, if you can afford it, this would be your best value. But if you can't, that's fine. You can get a stamp press. Like I said, they're about $11, and that will help you get your stamping right. If you don't have a heat gun, because we're going to need one for this project, if you don't have a heat gun, you can always use a hair dryer, as long as it's one that gets really, really hot. Um, but you might want to consider at some point getting a heat gun for your crafting. It will come in very, very handy. I like this one. This is a craft mat, and actually, it's the purpose of this was for people to do transfers, like people who make T-shirts and stuff. And when you put it on the machine heats up. And we have one that we use to make posters and do a lot of other things. So you can buy these. I order them off of Amazon, and I get like 6 in a pack, and I think it's like 6 for $12 or whatever. So you don't need to spend $13, $14 for a single mat like this. And actually, you might be able to find these mats, you know, at Dollar Tree or Big Lots, because people use them for cookie sheets. The ones that are used for cookie sheets, they have a little bit of a different texture to them, but they work just as well. You just want something that your glue won't stick to, and your inks, you can ink on here, and it'll clean up very quickly. And of course, you know that you're going to need white cardstock, whatever kind of decorator paper you want to use to make your tag. You will need the black ink, Versamark, or another embossing ink. There are lots of embossing inks out there. And then you're going to need a colored ink. I'm using distress inks. You can use chalk. You can use any dye-based ink. I would not recommend using pigment ink, because pigment ink takes a very, very long time to dry, and it doesn't work for the kind of embossing that stenciling and embossing that we're going to be doing today. So chalk inks, yes. Distress inks, yes. Any other kind of colored dye inks will work. This is a dye ink that I have that's like maybe 15 years old, from Inkadinkado. Inkadinkado doesn't even make inks anymore, but I had these pads and some great colors, and I used this one on this project. So just make sure you got a dye ink. Look at it. They always label theirs with a big D, a W for washable, and a P for pigment. So, okay, so now I think that is everything, and we're going to pause, and we'll come back for part 2, which will be the actual project. So once you cut your cardstock to 4.5, if you're using an 11-inch piece of cardstock, just regular letter size paper, then you just need to cut it 4.5, and you'll end up with 4.5 by 11. Then you want to put it on your scoreboard, and we are going to score at 4.5 and at 9. And so the 9 here gives you your flap. So then we're going to take this end, the 4.5 end, and we're going to cut off 1/2 inch from this side. So I'm going to run over here to my, why don't I bring it back into camera? How's that? Just come back over here and get that just right, and remove 1/2 inch. And so when we burnish this, okay, so now when you burnish your folds where we cut off the 1/2 inch, that gives you the inside where your flap is. Now, it's entirely up to you. You can just leave it square. You don't have to cut the finger hole like I did. I mean, because the tag is going to have a string on it. You can cut this larger if you want. That's a design decision that you can make on your own. But what I am going to do right now on my card is just to go ahead and start laying down my color. And I will do all of my cutting later. So my flap is going to be, I think I'm going to make that a different color. So I'm not going to color that in. So I'm starting by inking up my brush, and then I'm tapping it off the paper. And I'm starting off the paper as I apply the ink. Now, I'm applying this ink to a piece of cardstock that's already colored, because I'm going to put another color on when I do my stencil. And so I'm hoping that this is going to work out the way it did when I was practicing. So, do this. I don't want the pink to be very dark at all. So I'm trying to do like a Baskin Robbins type color scheme. So and the reason I'm wiping this down is because when I put my cardstock back over here, I don't want the pink ink to be on the inside. I probably could take this down and mask off the corners, but I don't care if these colors overlap on the end. Okay. This is not supposed to be like evenly a solid color. That's not the goal here. And you can determine how intense you want your colors. My colors, I don't really want them that intense. So, but I do want my edges kind of heavy, so I'm going to go in on my edges a little bit. Okay. All right. Now that I have that done, and this is, I have to wash this one now. It's been used quite a bit, but I keep this micro cloth handy to clean my brushes, and I can use the same brush, but I'm going to change this up simply because of the stencil that I'm using has a small, just small dots. I was originally going to go in here with just some vintage photo, but I think I'm going to go ahead and use the Versamark, and I'll see what happens. So I'm taping down my stencil with my removable tape, and I'm taping down my card so that it won't shift around. Now I'm going to take my Versamark pad, and this is an old pad. I've been using it for a while, but it still works. So I'm going to just use what is called the direct to paper method, and I'm going to just press down into the stencil. Just press and press and press. I'm waiting on a delivery that originally, when I checked my Amazon account, it said it would be here today by 3, and it's almost 4. So I just went and checked, and now it's saying between 4 and 6. But I guess everything and everybody's behind with everything that's going on, so it's no biggie. All right, now I'm going to come here. I'm trying to find where the dots are here, and just kind of line them up so that when I emboss this, it doesn't come out looking too crazy. Okay, I think that will do it right there. And just press again and again on here. Okay, and then I'm going to move it, except when I look right here, there are no. So I'm just going to try to see if I can't fix that. Yeah, that kind of fixed it. And then I'm going to do my flap. and I'm really pressing down in here. I think I'll be glad when my new pad comes. But I have a refill for this pad, so I will continue to use this pad because there's nothing wrong with it. The discoloration doesn't mean anything. Okay, good. That came out really good. So now what I'm going to do, oh, I should have wiped that down with an anti-static cloth. I forgot. This is an anti-static pillow, and it's just a piece of material with powder inside. You can make one using an old t-shirt. If you sew, you can take like an old t-shirt or a sock and just fill it up with baby powder and make your own anti-static bag. So I'm going to take, oh, there's Amazon. They just rang the doorbell. Yippee. And they said Amazon. So hubby's in charge of sanitizing all the mail for us. Okay, I hope this is going to work because hubby was otherwise engaged and I had to go deal with UPS. So I don't know if my embossing powder hasn't been on here too long. We shall see, said the blind man. So let's see. This thing needs to warm up. Okay. It seems to be working okay. Okay, I'm going to do this on camera because it's going to take a minute and it's noisy. Okay, so that went okay. Most of the embossing powder took, and now I'm just going through on the back and applying Vintage Photo Distress ink, and it's only going to take in the areas where there isn't any embossing powder. So the pink will be there, my embossed dots will be there, and the only place that this is going to show up is in the areas where there was no embossing powder, and then this will, the brown will show through. Just sort of wipe this. Now I want to get my flap just a little bit darker. Okay. All right, so that pretty much looks the way I want it to look. I am going to now cut my thumb hole here, and I really just eyeball this. I don't really measure it. It's easy to see the sides where you are before you cut, before you make that final cut. That's not centered. I'm trying to do this on camera so you can see it. That's not it. That looks close. Okay, and then I'm going to use my corner rounders to round off my corners. But like I said, you don't have to do this. If you don't have a corner rounder, you can leave your corners squared and it will work just fine. I'm going to round these off. And I'm using a 3/8 inch corner rounder, but you can use whatever you have. Okay. And I'm going to burnish this a little bit. Right there. Burnish this fold. And so this is going to be, the front. And I know the colors don't look that great now, but what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to take some Perfect Pearls and I am going to brush that on. This is just a step that I'm doing. You don't have to do this. I just like doing this on these little pockets. I found that it gives them a really nice kind of satiny feel, and the linen cardstock already has a great feel to it. And so adding this is just an extra layer of goodness, and it gives a different feel to your project. So I want to wipe this down. And I generally wipe this down so the shimmer is stronger in some places than it is in others. I try to put as much of my liquid pearls back in the jar as I can. I know I say a lot, but I'm working on that. So I will do this all over the entire card. I'm not going to make you watch that. Okay, now when you use perfect pearls, you have to set it with water. And what you do is you don't spray the water directly onto your project. Spray a mist and then pass your card through it. So you mist, pass the card through. Mist, pass the card through. Mist, pass the card through. But you don't want to, especially with the distress inks, because if you spray it directly on your card, you're going to get little water droplets, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes that can give you another look for your project, but if that's not the look you're going for, you probably don't want to do that. Okay, so once you've done that, then I wanted to show you, if you can see it, I wanted to show you the satiny look from adding the perfect pearls. It gives it a real shimmer. And off camera, I took my microcloth and I wiped it down like this to even out my perfect pearls. Okay, so what I'm about to do now is prepare my decorative edge. And I'm just going to take the edge die that I'm going to use, and I'll grab that so you can see it. I want a different cut for this, so I'm going to just, oops, not that way, I won't get a cut. I'm going to just position this to give me sort of a fancy cut on this edge that's going to add a little character to this card flap. So I will put that there, and then I'm using just some pieces of the removable tape that I used earlier. And I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to take it over to my big shot and cut this, and I'll be right back. So here's my edge cut, and I like it. It's different. It's got a little swoop, and it has the little embossed holes at the top. So I like that. I like that it's not symmetric. Okay, now to secure our flap, we need to take our double-sided tape, and I always put my tape on this end, and that way I know I'm getting it where my pocket ends. And I stop right before my rounded edge, because if you put it all the way to your rounded edge, it will make your opening even tighter, and you won't be able to easily get your tag in and out. So we're going to burnish that, and then we're going to just remove the release paper here. Okay, and then just close it and varnish to make sure that it's secure. And so that's that. So your envelope is basically done, except for determining how you are going to decorate it. I think I'm going to just do another ribbon closer for this one. But now let's take a look at what we're going to do with our tag. Okay, so now we are ready to assemble our tag. And to save time, I cut these elements off camera. And I have these little sheets here to show you. This was my practice sheet for the front of my folder. And as you can see, when I moved my stencil around, things got a little bit out of whack. But the good thing about doing a project like this is that that doesn't matter. As long as you have an idea of where you're going with the project and you can reproduce it. I will fix this probably with a sentiment and some embellishments. But I just wanted to show you how I use up my scraps, because you always end up with a lot of scraps. I will keep this because I like this, and I will do it on something else, and I will use this panel on something else, maybe as a backing on a card. So if you have a practice sheet and then you look at it and you're like, oh, that's not too bad, put it aside because you can use it for another project. Now this one, obviously, I'm just going to scrap. I could not use it for anything, so it is going into the trash. In order to make the back for my tag, I cut a piece of, this is called paper bag. That's the color of this cardstock, and I ordered it by mistake. I thought I was ordering craft paper, but this is a little thicker than I would normally use for my cards, and it's not craft colored. But for what I'm doing today, it turned out to be perfect. And what I did was I just took a piece of this card, and I colored it lightly with my Vintage Photo Distress ink, and then I used my stencil to put my dots on, my polka dots on. And this circle that I cut here is this large size of the just regular circle dies. Okay, so I can throw that away. I'm not going to use, sometimes I will save these because you can use them as a frame. If you can cut a larger circle and use this as a frame, but for this one, it's getting tossed. Okay, so then I just took some of my Perfect Pearls. I have one that is a rust color, and I stenciled my circles on, then I put some of the rust colored Perfect Pearls on there. And I did the same thing for this piece. Now this piece is actual craft cardstock. So this is going to be on the back, and this is going to be on the front, and it's going to have the decorations on it. This is a piece of craft foam, and it's pretty flat right now because I ran it through my Big Shot machine a couple of times, but it will regain its volume, and so your card will be puffed up. So the first thing that I am going to do is put double-sided tape on my craft foam. And usually I will cut this size or so smaller than my card, but my card, when I say card like that, I don't mean a greeting card, I mean card stock, but I will cut it a little smaller than my card. And this time I didn't. I just cut it to the same size as my card. And I'm going to burnish this down and make sure that it's adhered. And then I'm going to use my pokey tool to remove the release paper. And if I can speed this up in the video, I will. I think I told you all last time, I'm trying to become an editor. I mean, well, not that I want to edit anything for anybody else, but for my own purposes, to be able to edit mistakes and what have you out of my videos and do it so that it's seamless. And so far, I mean, I've done okay, but my videos overall, I'm working on trying to improve them. It's like any other skill. You just have to keep working at it and working at it. You know, as they say in football, you just have to keep running that play until you get it right. So I will see about speeding this up. And it just depends. I think I can. Okay, so this is the back. And so I am going to, one other thing that I do before I do this, I always put glue on top of my, oops, this is too much, but I apply glue to the top of my double-sided tape because with the double-sided tape, once you get it down, especially this double-sided tape that I use, it has I mean, it's aggressive, and it's just once you get it down, it's down there, then you can't move it. And so I always put glue on top of it because it does give you a space of time to move it around. So that attaches that there. Now I need to put it on this side so that I can attach my card front when I'm ready. But I'm going to obviously put my embellishments on before I do that. But I can get it ready. Everything except putting my glue down. Okay, so here we go. So that's down, and burnish it, and I'm just going to put that to one side until we are ready to attach the two pieces. Now, for the front of the card, these are the decorative pieces that I cut out using this die set. And I wish I could give you the name of it or who makes it, but I really don't know. So I tried looking it up once and I couldn't find it. But it's a very pretty set. So I'm going to glue these pieces, and I'm going to glue those off camera, but I'll put them in here to give you some idea of what it's going to look like. I wanted a die with an open design so that you could see the dots in the background, which would tie it back to the front of my card. I like for my cards to make sense. So that's what it will look like, and I'll have an embellishment in the middle, and then we'll come back and assemble the tag and work on the inside of the card. Okay, so I decided that I needed to figure out what I was going to do on the front to make sure that the front of this pocket card ties back to the tag, because I want it to be a cohesive design. So I took a label die and cut out a shape, and it's white, well, it's actually gold paper. I was going to use it, and I didn't like the gold, so I just flipped it over because it's white on the back, and colored it in with some ink, with some distress ink, vintage photo, and then I think worn lipstick, just to try to get it close to that color. I can correct the color later, but right now I want to get this sentiment stamped, and I'm using my Sunlit Stamping Pro. I usually use my Tim Holtz, but I'm finding that I really do love this little stamping platform. For 24 bucks, I think I'll pick up another one. I generally have two of everything in my studio because I really don't like to have things break on me and I have to wait. And I really don't have to wait that long. Generally, I can get it from Amazon in a couple of days, but those couple of days, I'm like upset. So I stamped that first with my black ink. That's Memento Tuxedo Black. And now I'm going to stamp it again with Versamark embossing ink so that I can emboss it with clear embossing powder. And what that will do is it will make the sentiment more intense. It'll be darker, and it will have like a raised surface, so when you touch it, and it looks like that on the card as well. So I'm going to do that, put this aside, and close this, and really you should, when you're embossing, before you stamp your card the first time, you should wipe it down with the anti-static bag that I showed you earlier. Not as hot. I didn't put it on my little board, so my fingers are getting a little hot. Okay, and you don't want to over, I knocked my camera out of focus. You don't want to overdo it. If I bring this closer to the camera, you can see what that embossing does to your sentiment. So now, when I put this here, the color is still off, but I'm going to fix that and put it there. And so now it's still a lot darker than I like, so I may change that. It may be too dark, but we'll see. I think it will be okay. Yeah, I think it will be fine. And I've already put my ribbon on that I'm going to use with both my tag and as a closer for this card. So now that I'm comfortable with this, I am now going to assemble the tag. I normally would run this through my Xyron. I just got the new one, a new one. It's the Creative Station, and I haven't used it yet. I don't know. I'm sure it's just like any other. You just put it in and roll it through. But I think I'm going to just try to do this using my glue. And what I do is I'll just put a pool of glue, and then I just roll this through it all the way around, all the way around, all the way around. For this particular or any circular ones I'm doing that are this intricate, if I'm not using my Xyron, but usually I'll use my Xyron sticker maker and just get the glue on like that. So here we go. Yeah, I did do the right side. Okay. I love this die, but if you don't get this down just right, your tag can be out of whack. Okay, and I think let's see. Yeah, I think I've got everything in the right place. Okay, and then I'll just go through and add a little more glue. Oops, and because this glue dries clear and it doesn't dry tacky. When it dries, there's no tackiness, so it won't be sticky, have some little tacky stickiness when your project dries. And you can use, I have a sponge that I keep that you can use the sponge to spread your glue like that. Then I just keep 2 of these cosmetic sponges at hand when I'm crafting, just so I can put down glue for sticky things like that. And of course I keep a baby wipe or a moist paper towel close at hand to wipe up glue spills so that I can continue to work. Okay, so the same thing would apply to this layer of die cut. So I'm going to, off camera, put down my various layers and come back and we'll do the final assembly. Okay, so now we're ready to assemble our tag. And while we were gone, I redid my sentiment because this one was just not working. And if it's bothering your eye, in all likelihood, it's going to bother the eye of the recipient or other people who see it. Okay, so I've decided that I'm going to use this flat back pearl in the middle here. So I'm just going to put just a little bit of glue there. and then get that centered. I put too much. So I'm going to dab that up because there's glue already on the back of the pearl. I'm trying to stay in camera, but I'll need to pull that down. There. So I'm not going to put a sentiment of any kind on this one because the sentiment's going to be on the outside. But I was thinking as I was working that it would probably be kind of cool to put thanks on the back right here. So what I'm going to do is put the back onto my stamp platform here on my Stamping Pro. Let me move everything out of the way. And another good point I want to point out right now about having a stamping platform is because when I needed to restamp this sentiment, my stamp, it was still set up, everything was still in place, and so all I had to do was recut my die piece and then put it down and stamp. So that's a great advantage, and I usually don't take my stamps off until I'm perfectly sure that the last stamp I used turned out the way I wanted it to. So this, thanks, and friend. And so I think that I want to use thanks friend. So I'm going to put this here, that there, and here's my friend, and here's my thanks. Oops, I got stuck together. So thanks friend, and try to get that centered a little bit. I had some scraps. I want to see something. Since I'm doing that, and I saved these because this was from when I cut my die. Yeah, I like it. I like it. So I will do that. So I'll get my thanks friend set up and stamped, and then I'm going to glue this down on the back, which will make that more interesting, so it won't be so boring. Okay, I'll do that, and I'll be right back. And I decided I wanted to let you see me stamp this, because remember we had that configuration with the foam on the other side, which makes this a thick piece. So I'm just going to press down and put a little pressure over the stamp area and pick it up. It looks good, but I think I want just a little bit more ink on it. So I really like I said, I really like the Stamping Pro. It's like a press, it's like a stamp press with a hard base. And so it's not like the Tim Holtz or the Misty. It doesn't have a hinge, so it can't get anybody to the point where they've got their knickers all in a twist about it. So it's a nice little tool. It's a nice little tool. I think you should really consider adding it to your crafting toolkit. Okay, so that's what I want there. And I'm going to just put this top over here for a moment. You guys, I'm going to have to move you. I think I moved that right there. Trying to see if I want to use the big one or the little one or both of them. I think I'm going to use them both. It looks sort of like a bullseye. But I'm going to put the big one down first because I definitely know that I want to use that. So yeah, I think that's what I'll do. I'll use the big one, then I'll decide about the little one. Okay, so now I've put my tag together, and when I put them back together, I decided to use the little one on the back because I'm going to use the big one on the front. And when I put them together, I didn't quite get it lined up exactly where I wanted, but this is close enough. So what I normally do to punch these is I I use my pokey tool to just poke a hole through there, and then I take it and punch it on my crocodile. It's right there. And so the hole is punched and it's ready for ribbon. And I'm going to look. I think that I have a grommet that will match that color, I think. I have to look and see. Let's see, I've got two that I think will work if I can get it out of here. It keeps running around. So let me see which one works the best. That works. And excuse me, this works better though. Yes, so that's the one I'm going to use. So, and I always do this upside down and put my let me get in the camera so you can see this. So I have the leg, the part that's going to go through the hole. I always go from that direction, and then there we go. That one turned out pretty good. Sometimes I don't quite get it right on the back because I don't use the right flattener, the part that flattens it. But like everything else, practice makes perfect. Okay, and so this ribbon is rather thick, but I'm going to just double it up. Okay, I'm not sure what happened. Oh, I put that down on the, sorry about that. I'm hoping I can dub that out. Okay, and I have to figure how long I want the leg of this bow to be. Okay, so I think I have an idea. Excuse me, for some reason my throat doesn't want to work today. Wrong scissors. Okay, cut that. And then you just put the ribbon through this way. You want to even up your legs before you do it. So let me pull this back out. And make sure your legs are even, like this. And then you want to push it through your hole. You don't have to use a grommet. You don't have to do anything. You just make the hole, put your ribbon through. That will work just fine. I use them because, you know, you never know. And I want to make sure that the thing is sturdy enough if they decide to keep it, that it could withstand being handled. So you loop that through and pull it tight, and there you go. I'm going to cut this off. This is a little long, so I'm going to cut that. But we've got our tag done. On the other side, it says, "Thanks, friend." And we're just going to, the final thing that we need to do is just to secure the sentiment and the circle. And so if we get the circle down first, and that's the center on that. Okay, so we get that down, then we will be able to put the sentiment in its rightful place. So here's my little glue trick again. Just put down my little glue and just run this through it. Just go around and pick up the glue. And that just works for me. It's funny because my husband came up here. I left that. I told you I got the new creative station from Xyron, the sticker maker. And the hubster comes up here and goes, "Oh, what? You don't have any room up here for your that new thing you bought?" Because he's always saying that I had too much stuff in my studio. And so that was this little joke. He was laughing. I'm like, "No, that's not it. I had just wiped everything down after they delivered it. I had to, wipe it down with the bleach and soap water, and I just left everything sitting on the kitchen counter to make sure not inviting the coronavirus into my home." Okay, so we put that there, and I'm trying to decide if I want to dimension my sentiment. I don't really think that I do. I think I'm just going to let it be flat. I don't think I want to dimension it at all. So, I'm wondering. Okay, well, I can look at that forever. I need to just go ahead and make a decision. And sometimes it's like that when you're working on a project. It's like, I need to make a decision. What am I going to do? And I always say there's no wrong or right decisions when you're crafting. This is your world, and you create it. And so whatever you create in your world is just fine. But I'm just going to let this be flat. So I am going to put glue back here. The other thing about this glue that I like is it doesn't clog up like some glues, so you don't need a safety pin to stick in it, which is great. I always, since I keep baby wipes on my table at all times, I will generally just wipe the top off with a baby wipe when I'm done. When you're putting down sentiments like this, I recommend using wet glue as opposed to double-sided tape or anything that's going to stick right away, because you want to give yourself an opportunity to straighten up anything that's crooked. Okay, so that's our project. It is done. I'm going to trim my ribbon because you know what I think I'm going to do though is just maybe just put a little staple in here with, if I have any staples in my mini stapler. I may not have reloaded it. Oh, I did. Cool. I'm just going to staple that, and then the person who gets it can cut it down because they may want to hang it. So this will go, and this does fit, by the way. Now it's tight. They're all tight like that, but you want it to be a tight fit. So it will fit down in there, and you can fold your ribbon and then put your bow on. That's I got mine kind of twisted, but here we go. You put that down and get your bow straight the way you want it to go. Well, mine is not cooperating right now, as you can see, but I think that's because my ribbon is twisted and I put this on upside down. But that's the general idea of our project, and I think it's a cute way to, you don't have to do a tag. You can put a gift card in there, you can put a photograph in there, but this is a cute and fun way to do it. It doesn't take a lot of paper. You don't need a lot of crafting supplies. You don't need a lot of crafting knowledge, and it doesn't take a lot of time. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll have another project next week. I don't know what it will be. If you are a beginner and you're watching this video, excuse me, if you will go to a place to start, which is my blog for beginners. It's a resource and challenge blog. So if you will go there and leave a question, or say we would love to see, or I would love to see a tutorial on how do you do whatever it is you want to know how to do, then I will do a video on that. Now, like I said, my videos are not, I'm not a professional. I'm trying to get better, but I think that I can explain card making and to you. We can do it in a fun way, and I will try to give you all the information that you need to get you started in your new hobby. So again, thanks so much for stopping by, and I look forward to seeing you the next time. Bye. has two speeds.